The morning Deshawn handed me those papers, I was standing in my garden, pulling weeds from around the tomatoes. August in Memphis. Heat so thick you could fold it like a blanket. He didn't even get out of that sleek Tesla he drove now. Just rolled down the window, handed the manila envelope to his wife Jasmine, and let her do the walking. "Miss Lorraine," she said, her voice pitched high and apologetic. "Deshawn asked me to give you this." I wiped my hands on my apron, dirt still packed under my fingernails. The envelope was heavy. Official. My full name printed across the front in letters that looked like they'd been stamped by a machine that didn't care who it was hurting. Lorraine, Patricia, Washington. "What is this?" I asked, though something deep in my bones already knew. Jasmine shifted her weight, designer sandals sinking slightly into the soft earth of my garden path. It's legal stuff. Deshawn thought it would be better if he didn't hand it to me himself," I finished. She didn't answer, just turned and walked back to that car where my son sat looking at his phone like I wasn't standing there holding my whole world in a paper package. I opened it right there, right in front of God and the neighbors' nosy curtains and the hummingbirds that didn't stop drinking from my feeder just because my life was ending. Petition for restraining order. Plaintiff, Deshawn Marcus Washington. Defendant, Lorraine Patricia Washington. My own son was taking me to court. The words swam, repeated unwanted contact, boundary violations, emotional manipulation, intrusive behavior causing psychological distress. I read it 3 times before my knees remembered how to bend. I sat down right there in the dirt, tomatoes on one side, the fence I had painted yellow last spring on the other, and tried to understand how helping had turned into harassment. 68 years old. That's how long I'd been breathing. 43 of those years spent in classrooms teaching other people's children their ABCs, their multiplication tables, their worth. 26 years a widow after Marcus died with his work boots still by the door. And every single day since that November morning in 1987 when I pushed for 14 hours to bring Deshawn into this world, every single day, a mother. Now, my son, my only child, was asking a judge to legally keep me away from him. It didn't start like this. Of course it didn't. Nothing ever does. When Deshawn and Jasmine bought that house in Germantown, the one with the 2-car garage and the neighborhood watch signs, I was so proud I cried. My baby, who'd grown up in a rental duplex where the heat didn't always work in winter, now had granite countertops and a backyard with actual grass. "Mama," he'd said, pulling me into a hug on moving day, "none of this happens without you." I believed him because it was true. I'd worked double shifts at the hospital on weekends, cleaned houses on my days off, sold my good jewelry. Also, his college fund could grow, so he could be the first Washington to walk across a stage in a cap and gown that wasn't rented. When Jasmine got pregnant with Zora, I showed up with groceries, baby clothes, my grandmother's cradle that had rocked 3 generations. "You'll need help," I'd said. "Let me be here for you." At first, they smiled. They said thank you. They let me hold Zora, teach her peekaboo, braid her hair into the tiny puffs Jasmine said she didn't have time for. But something shifted. Slow at first, like water eroding stone, so gradual you don't notice until the shape is completely different. Jasmine started using phrases from those parenting podcasts she listened to. "We're establishing boundaries. We need space to parent our way. Your generation did things differently." Deshawn would nod along, saying nothing. Not defending me, not defending her, just silent. Like Switzerland with softer hands. The visits got shorter. The phone calls got sparser. The invitations dried up like late summer grass. One Thanksgiving, they went to Jasmine's parents in Atlanta. Didn't even tell me until I called asking what time dinner was. "Oh, Mama," he said, voice tight with that new distance he'd perfected. "I thought Jasmine mentioned it. We're doing it with her folks this year, just keeping it small." Small meant without me. Christmas came through a group text. "Happy holidays from the Washington family." A photo of them three in matching pajamas, Zara holding a toy I didn't buy. I responded with a heart emoji. Because what else do you do when you're being erased in real time? The court date was set for September 12th, a Tuesday. I know because I circled it on my calendar in red ink and then stared at it every morning while my coffee went cold. I called my sister Vanessa in Nashville. She'd been through her own heartbreak with her daughter, so I thought she'd understand. "Girl," she said after I explained everything, "Deshaun's really doing this?" "Got the papers right here." "What does he want? Like, what's the actual complaint?" I read from the document, my voice cracking on certain phrases. Repeated unwanted contact, boundary violations, emotional manipulation, intrusive behavior causing psychological distress. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Then, "They're punishing you for loving them." Feels that way. "You getting a lawyer?" I called one, woman named Patricia Chin. She said it's more common than people think, adult children cutting off their parents legally. "That's supposed to make you feel better?" "No," I admitted. "It just makes me feel less alone." That night, I pulled out the box I kept in my closet, the one full of memories that proved I'd been a good mother, even if my son didn't remember anymore. Report cards where teachers praised Deshaun's kindness, birthday cards he'd made me from construction paper and glitter glue, a Mother's Day poem from 4th grade. "My mama works hard every day. She helps me when I want to play. She makes me laugh. She makes me strong. With her is where I belong." I held that poem until the paper went soft with tears. He wrote that. He meant it. Somewhere inside the man who was suing me, that little boy still existed. I had to believe that. Because if I didn't, if I accepted that he was truly gone, then what had any of it been for? If this story is touching something deep in your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone in their pain. The day I met with Patricia Chen, the sky was that particular shade of gray that makes Memphis look like it's holding its breath. Her office was downtown, 9th floor, windows overlooking the river where barges moved slow and purposeful, like they had all the time in the world. Patricia was younger than I expected, maybe 40, shark-eyed, with reading glasses perched on her head like a second set of eyes. She didn't waste time with small talk. "Mrs. Washington," she began, setting a legal pad between us, "I've reviewed the petition. I need you to understand something before we proceed. Family court is complicated. Emotions run high. Judges have seen it all. Our job is to present facts, not feelings." "Facts?" I repeated. "Yes. Now, they're claiming you violated their boundaries repeatedly despite being asked to stop. Is that accurate?" I shifted in my chair. "Depends on what you call a violation. Give me examples." I took a breath. "I brought dinner over without calling first, twice, maybe 3 times. Zora, that's my granddaughter, she had the flu and I thought soup would help. Jasmine said I should have texted. She wrote something down. What else? I showed up at Zora's dance recital. They didn't invite me, but I heard about it from my neighbor whose granddaughter takes classes at the same studio. I sat in the back, didn't make a scene, just wanted to see her dance. And Deshawn sent me an email the next day, said it was inappropriate, that I was disrespecting their space. Her expression didn't change. Anything financial? That's when I pulled out the folder, the one I'd been keeping since the summons arrived. Inside were bank statements, receipts, canceled checks, 15 years of love translated into dollars and cents. I helped with their down payment, I said, sliding the first document across the desk. $35,000 in 2016. They were short, and I had savings from selling Marcus's truck and some bonds my mother left me. Patricia reviewed it carefully. Was this a loan? No. It was a gift. I told them not to worry about paying me back. Do you have that in writing? I shook my head. She continued flipping through the papers. What's this? $6,200? New furnace. Winter of 2019. There's one out during that cold snap. Zora kept coughing, and Jasmine was pregnant with their second baby. I wired the money the same day. And this? Preschool deposit. Car repairs, medical bills when Jasmine's insurance lapsed, groceries. I paused. There's more, but I didn't keep receipts for everything. Sunday dinners I cooked, babysitting, the weeks I kept Zora while they went on vacation. Patricia leaned back, studying me. Mrs. Washington, I need to ask you something directly. Did you ever use these gifts as leverage? Did you ever say, I paid for this, so you owe me? The question stung. No, I said firmly. Never. I gave because I wanted to help, because that's what family does. She nodded slowly. Here's the problem. They're framing your financial contributions as part of a pattern of control. They're saying you use money to maintain access, to insert yourself into their lives against their wishes. That's not true. I believe you, but we need to prove it. And more than that, we need to prove that your presence, even uninvited, doesn't constitute harassment. Harassment? The word tasted bitter. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh legal pad of my own and started writing. Not for the court, for myself. A timeline of erosion. June 2018. Jasmine asked me to stop giving Zora candy, said it undermined their no sugar rule. I apologized and bought fruit instead. August 2018. Showed up for Deshawn's birthday with a cake. Jasmine said they'd already cut one. Mine sat untouched on the counter. December 2018. Offered to keep Zora for Christmas Eve so they could have a date night. They said they'd hired a babysitter instead. March 2019. Commented that Zora's jacket seemed too thin for the weather. Jasmine said, "We've got it handled, Miss Lorraine." That was the first time she called me Miss instead of Mama L. The list went on, page after page of tiny rejections, none big enough to call out on their own, but together they formed a portrait of a woman being gently, persistently pushed out. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear smudged the ink on April 2021. Not invited to Zora's 5th birthday party. Found out from Facebook. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for late September. Patricia called to prepare me. They're going to paint you as overbearing, intrusive, unable to respect boundaries. You need to be calm, collected. Don't get emotional on the stand. I'll try. Don't try, do. If you cry, if you raise your voice, if you defend too aggressively, it plays into their narrative. What's my narrative? She paused. That you're a mother who loves her son, who helped when help was needed, and who was never told clearly that your presence was unwanted until you were served with legal papers. That's the truth. Then that's what we present. But truth, I was learning, didn't always win in court, especially when the other side had a lawyer who looked like he charged $400 an hour and wore cufflinks that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my porch in the dark, listening to the cicadas sing their last songs of summer. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car passed, headlights cutting through the humid air. I thought about calling Deshaun, just to hear his voice, to ask him one more time, why? What did I do that was so unforgivable? But I didn't, because I already knew the answer. I hadn't done anything unforgivable. I just loved him out loud in a life that required silence. Sometimes the hardest truth is realizing love alone isn't enough. If you felt this kind of heartbreak, you're not alone. Keep reading, there's more to the story. The Shelby County Courthouse smelled like old paper and floor wax. Every footstep echoed. People moved through the halls in clusters, lawyers with briefcases, families huddled on benches, court officers who'd seen it all and believed none of it anymore. I wore my navy dress, the one I'd bought for Marcus's funeral and hadn't worn since. It still fit, though the zipper fought me a little. Patricia met me outside courtroom 4B, her expression professionally neutral. "Remember," she said quietly, "stay calm, answer only what's asked, don't elaborate, don't explain, just answer." I nodded, though my hands were shaking. Inside, the room was smaller than I had imagined. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, an American flag drooping in the corner like it was tired of watching families tear each other apart. Deshaun was already seated at the plaintiff's table. He wore a suit I'd never seen before, probably bought for this occasion. His lawyer, a white man with silver hair and a practiced smile, leaned over whispering something. Deshaun nodded without looking up. Jasmine sat behind him, hands folded, eyes forward. She looked like she was at a job interview, not a hearing to legally separate her husband from his mother. They didn't look at me. Not once. The bailiff called the room to order. "All rise." Judge Marlene Kemp entered. A black woman, late 50s, gray locks pulled back, greeting glasses on a chain around her neck. She had the kind of face that heard every excuse, every lie, every desperate truth. "Be seated," she said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who didn't have time for nonsense. She reviewed the documents in front of her, flipping pages with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "This is a petition for a protective order," she began. "Mr. Washington, you're alleging that your mother, Mrs. Lorraine Washington, has engaged in a pattern of behavior that constitutes harassment and emotional distress. Is that correct?" Deshaun's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We have documented multiple instances of unwanted contact, boundary violations, and interference in the family's private affairs despite repeated requests to cease." Judge Kemp looked at me. "Mrs. Washington, you're represented by Miss Chen?" Patricia stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "And how do you respond to these allegations?" Patricia's voice was steady, clear. "We deny that Mrs. Washington's actions constitute harassment. What the petitioner describes as violations, we describe as the normal actions of a concerned mother and grandmother who was never clearly informed that her presence was unwanted." Noted. Judge Kemp turned back to Deshaun's lawyer. "Proceed." They went first, built their case brick by brick. The lawyer presented a timeline. Dates I'd shown up unannounced, gifts I'd given without permission, comments I'd made that Jasmine deemed critical. He even had screenshots, text messages where I'd asked if I could stop by, emails where I'd mentioned Zora seemed tired or needed a warmer coat. He made love sound like surveillance. "Your Honor," he said, pacing slightly, "this isn't about a mother caring for her son. This is about a pattern of control. Mrs. Washington has repeatedly inserted herself into decisions that are not hers to make. She's undermined the parent's authority. She's appeared at events uninvited. She's created an environment where my clients cannot parent without feeling watched, judged, and manipulated." I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and say, "I changed his diapers when he had colic. I walked him to school every day for 6 years. I held him when his daddy died and promised him we'd be okay." But I stayed silent because Patricia had told me to. Then Jasmine was called to testify. She stood, smoothed her skirt, and walked to the witness stand like she'd rehearsed it. Maybe she had. Mrs. Washington, the lawyer began, can you describe your relationship with the defendant? She's my mother-in-law, Jasmine said. Her voice was calm, measured, and I've tried to respect her role in Deshawn's life, but it's become difficult. Difficult how? She doesn't respect our boundaries. We've asked her repeatedly to call before coming over. She doesn't. We've asked her not to give Zora certain foods or toys without checking with us first. She ignores that. We've told her we need space to parent on our own, and she acts like we're rejecting her. Have you ever felt unsafe? Not physically, but emotionally, yes. It's exhausting to constantly feel like someone is hovering, waiting for you to mess up so they can step in. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. Thank you, the lawyer said. No further questions. Patricia stood for cross-examination. Her voice was gentle but firm. Mrs. Washington, did you ever explicitly tell Mrs. Lorraine Washington, do not contact us anymore? Jasmine shifted. We set boundaries. That's not what I asked. Did you ever say, clearly and directly, we don't want you in our lives? No, but did you ever refuse her financial help? When she paid for the furnace, the preschool, the down payment, did you tell her no? She offered, and you accepted. Jasmine's jaw tightened. She made it hard to say no. Hard how? She'd say things like, I just want to help. Don't you want what's best for Zora? It felt manipulative. Patricia let that hang in the air. Then, or did it feel like a mother trying to ensure her grandchild was cared for? Objection, Deshawn's lawyer interjected. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Kemp said. Move on, Miss Chen. Patricia nodded. No further questions. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand on legs that felt like someone else's. The bailiff swore me in. I placed my hand on the Bible and promised to tell the truth, as if I'd ever done anything else. Patricia started gently. Mrs. Washington, can you tell the court about your relationship with your son? I took a breath. I raised Deshawn by myself after my husband passed. He was 12. It was just the two of us for a long time. I worked hard to give him opportunities I never had. I wanted him to be proud of where he came from and excited about where he could go. And when he married Jasmine, I was happy. I welcomed her into our family. When Zora was born, I wanted to help however I could. Did you ever intend to control or manipulate them? No. Never. I just wanted to be there. Patricia handed me a folder. These are records of financial contributions you made to Deshawn and Jasmine over the years. Can you walk the court through them? I did. Every check, every transfer. I explained the circumstances, why the money was needed, how quickly they'd asked, and how freely I'd given. Did you ever demand repayment? No. Did you ever use these gifts to force your way into their lives? No. I gave because I love them. Patricia paused. Mrs. Washington, when did you first learn that your presence was unwanted? My voice cracked. When I got the court papers, not before. They'd say things like, we need space, or please text first. But I didn't know. I didn't realize they meant stay away. I thought they just meant be more mindful. And if you had known. I looked at Deshawn for the first time. He was staring at the table. I would have stopped. Judge Kemp asked her own questions then. Mrs. Washington, she said, her tone neither kind nor harsh, do you believe you overstepped? I thought about lying, about defending every action, every visit, every call, but I didn't. Maybe, I said quietly, but I don't think love is supposed to feel like trespassing. She nodded slowly. I'll have my decision within the week. The hardest part of love is knowing when to hold on and when to let go. Stay with me. The end of this story will break you open and put you back together.
The letter came on a Thursday. Plain white envelope. Court seal pressed into the corner like a warning. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I set it on the kitchen table and made myself a cup of tea, chamomile with honey, the way Marcus used to like it, and sat watching the steam curl upward until it disappeared into nothing. Finally, I opened it. After review of all testimony and evidence presented, the court finds insufficient grounds to issue a protective order. The petition is hereby denied. I read it 3 times, and I set it down and cried. Not from relief, not from victory, just from exhaustion. They had tried to erase me legally, and the law said no. But that didn't mean I was welcome. It just meant I wasn't criminal. Patricia called an hour later. You saw the decision? I did. Congratulations, Mrs. Washington. This is a good outcome. Is it? I asked, because I still can't knock on my son's door without wondering if I'm breaking some invisible rule. She was quiet for a moment. The court can't fix relationships. It can only clarify boundaries. What happens next is up to you and your family. Family. The word felt hollow. For 2 weeks, nothing changed. No calls, no texts, no apology slipped under my door or whispered through a voicemail. I went about my life, watered my tomatoes, volunteered at the community center reading to children who still believed in happy endings, attended church where Sister Claudette squeezed my hand during prayer and didn't ask questions. Then on a Sunday morning, there was a knock. I opened the door and there stood Zora. She was alone. No Jasmine, no Deshawn, just my granddaughter in her church dress holding a piece of folded paper. Hi, Grandma, he said softly. My heart stuttered. Baby, does your mama know you here? He nodded. She said she's in the car. She said I could come knock. I looked past her. Jasmine's SUV was parked at the curb, engine running. She waved, small, uncertain, but a wave nonetheless. What's that you got? I asked, nodding at the paper. Zora handed it to me. I made it at school. We had to draw someone we missed. I unfolded it carefully. Inside was a crayon drawing of 2 figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. One tall, one small, both smiling. At the bottom, in wobbly letters, me and Grandma. I crouched down, eye level with her. I missed you too, baby. So much. I'm sorry we made you sad, she whispered. Oh, sweetheart, that wasn't your fault. Not even a little bit. She hugged me then, quick and tight, and I held on like she was the only solid thing left in the world. When she pulled back, she said, Mama says maybe you can come to my recital next month if you want. I said, my voice breaking. I really, really want. She smiled, big, bright, unguarded, and ran back to the car. Jasmine rolled down the window. We looked at each other across the distance. She didn't get out, didn't offer explanations, just said, we're trying. I nodded. That's all I asked, and she drove away. A week later, Deshawn called. Mama, the word nearly undid me. Hi, baby. Silence. Then, I don't know where to start. The beginning's usually good. He exhaled, long and heavy. I was scared of disappointing you, of not being enough. Jasmine kept saying we needed space to figure out who we were as parents, and I thought agreeing with her meant I was being a good husband. And now I think I confused being a good husband with being a bad son. I closed my eyes. You're not a bad son, Deshawn. You're just human. You hurt me. You did. I'm sorry. 2 words. Simple, insufficient, but real. I forgive you. I said, because what else was there to do? He cried then, quiet, muffled, the kind of crying men do when they've been holding it in too long. Can we start over? He asked. No, I said gently. We can't erase what happened, but we can start from here. The recital was at a small theater in Midtown. I arrived early, sat in the middle row and waited. When Deshawn and Jasmine walked in with Zora, they saw me. Jasmine nodded. Deshawn lifted his hand in a half wave. They didn't sit with me. Not yet, but they didn't avoid me either. When Zora took the stage and performed her routine, a wobbly but earnest ballet piece, I clapped so hard my palm stung. And when it was over, she ran to me first. Did you see me, Grandma? I saw it every second, baby. You were perfect. Later in the lobby, Deshawn approached. Thanks for coming. Wouldn't have missed it. Jasmine stood behind him, arms crossed, but not defensive, just present. Maybe, she said carefully, we could all have lunch next week. Talk. Figure out what this looks like going forward. I'd like that. And I meant it. We're still figuring it out. Some days are good. Some are awkward. Some are hard. But we're trying. And trying, I learned, is its own kind of love. I don't show up unannounced anymore. I text first. I wait for invitations. I respect their space while quietly holding my ground. And on the days when it hurts, when I remember the court papers and the silence and the feeling of being erased, I remind myself, love doesn't always look like closeness. Sometimes it looks like distance with the door left unlocked. Sometimes it looks like a drawing from a little girl who remembered you even when the adults forgot. Sometimes it looks like starting over with no guarantees, just hope. And that for now is enough. My name is Lorraine Patricia Washington. I'm 68 years old. I've been a teacher, a widow, a mother, a defendant, but most of all, I've been someone who loved when it wasn't easy, who stayed when it would have been simpler to walk away, who believed that family, even broken, is still family. If my story touched you, if you saw yourself in these words, or someone you know, or someone you lost, don't keep it inside. Share it. Talk about it. Let it remind you that you're not alone in your pain or your hope. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to love the people we've been given. And sometimes that's the hardest and holiest work there is.
If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your own story of family, forgiveness, or the courage it takes to keep loving when love gets complicated. You're not alone.